Chapter 16. Having set out from Elim, the whole Israelite community came into the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt. Here in the desert, the whole Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "Would that we had died at the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, as we sat by our flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. But you had to lead us into the desert to make the whole community die of famine." Then the Lord said to Moses,
"I will now rain down bread from heaven for you. Each day the people are to go out and gather their daily portion. Thus will I test them to see whether they follow my instructions or not. On the sixth day, however, when they prepare what they bring in, let it be twice as much as they gather on the other days."
So Moses and Aaron told all the Israelites, "At evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, as he heeds your grumbling against him." "But what are we that you should grumble against us? When the Lord gives you flesh to eat in the evening," continued Moses, "and in the morning your fill of bread, as he heeds the grumbling you utter against him, what then are we? Your grumbling is not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Tell the whole Israelite community, present yourselves before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling." When Aaron announced this to the whole Israelite community, they turned toward the desert, and lo, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. The Lord spoke to Moses and said,
"I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, in the evening twilight you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall have your fill of bread, so that you may know that I, the Lord, am your God."
In the evening, quail came up and covered the camp. In the morning, a dew lay all about the camp. And when the dew evaporated, there on the surface of the desert were fine flakes like hoarfrost on the ground. On seeing it, the Israelites asked one another, "What is this?" For they did not know what it was. But Moses told them, "This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat." Now, this is what the Lord commanded. So gather it that everyone has enough to eat, an omer for each person, as many of you as there are, each man providing for those of his own tent. The Israelites did so. Some gathered a large and some a small amount. But when they measured it out by the omer, he who had gathered a large amount did not have too much, and he who had gathered a small amount did not have too little. They so gathered that everyone had enough to eat. Moses also told them, "Let no one keep any of it over until tomorrow morning." But they would not listen to him. When some kept a part of it over until the following morning, it became wormy and rotten. Therefore Moses was displeased with them. Morning after morning they gathered it, till each had enough to eat, but when the sun grew hot, the manna melted away. On the sixth day they gathered twice as much food, 2 omers for each person. When all the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses, he told them, "That is what the Lord prescribed. Tomorrow is a day of complete rest, the Sabbath, sacred to the Lord. You may either bake or boil the manna as you please, but whatever is left, put away and keep for the morrow." When they put it away for the morrow, as Moses commanded, it did not become rotten or wormy. Moses then said, "Eat it today, for today is the Sabbath of the Lord. On this day you will not find any of it on the ground. On the other 6 days you can gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, none of it will be there." Still, on the 7th day, some of the people went out to gather it, although they did not find any. Then the Lord said to Moses,
"How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and laws? Take note, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you food for 2 days. On the 7th day, everyone is to stay home, and no one is to go out."
After that, the people rested on the 7th day. The Israelites called this food manna. It was like coriander seed, but white, and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, This is what the Lord has commanded. Keep an armor full of manna for your descendants, that they may see what food I gave you to eat in the desert while I brought you out of the land of Egypt." Moses then told Aaron, "Take an urn and put an omer of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord in safekeeping for your descendants." So Aaron placed it in front of the commandments for safekeeping, as the Lord commanded Moses. The Israelites ate this manna for 40 years until they came to the settled land. They ate manna until they reached the borders of Canaan. Chapter 17. From the desert of Sin, the whole Israelite community journeyed by stages as the Lord directed and encamped at Rephidim. Here there was no water for the people to drink. They quarreled therefore with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" Here then, in their thirst for water, the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "Why did you ever make us leave Egypt? Was it just to have us die here of thirst with our children and our livestock?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do with these people? A little more and they will stone me." The Lord answered Moses,
"Go over there in front of the people, along with some of the elders of Israel, holding in your hand as you go the staff with which you struck the river. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock in Horeb. Strike the rock, and the water will flow from it for the people to drink."
This Moses did in the presence of the elders of Israel. The place was called Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled there and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord in our midst or not?" At Rephidim, Amalek came and waged war against Israel. Moses therefore said to Joshua, "Pick out certain men, and tomorrow go out and engage Amalek in battle. I will be standing on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses told him. He engaged Amalek in battle after Moses had climbed to the top of the hill with Aaron and Hur. As long as Moses kept his hands raised up, Israel had the better of the fight. But when he let his hands rest, Amalek had the better of the fight. Moses' hands, however, grew tired, so they put a rock in place for him to sit on. Meanwhile, Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. And Joshua mowed down Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses,
"Write this down in a document as something to be remembered, and recite it in the ears of Joshua. I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens."
Moses also built an altar there, which he called Yahweh Nissi, for he said, "The Lord takes in hand his banner. The Lord will war against Amalek through the centuries." Chapter 18. Now Moses' father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. So his father-in-law Jethro took along Zipporah, Moses' wife, whom Moses had sent back to him, and her 2 sons. One of these was called Gershom, for he said, "I am a stranger in a foreign land." The other was called Eliezer, for he said, "My father's God is my helper. He has rescued me from Pharaoh's sword." Together with Moses' wife and sons, then his father-in-law Jethro came to him in the desert where he was encamped near the mountain of God, and he sent word to Moses, "I, Jethro, your father-in-law, am coming to you, along with your wife and her 2 sons." Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, bowed down before him, and kissed him. Having greeted each other, they went into the tent. Moses then told his father-in-law of all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for the sake of Israel, and of all the hardships they had to endure on their journey, and how the Lord had come to their rescue. Jethro rejoiced over all the goodness that the Lord had shown Israel in rescuing them from the hands of the Egyptians. "Blessed be the Lord," he said, "who has rescued his people from the hands of Pharaoh and the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is a deity great beyond any other, for he took occasion of their being dealt with insolently to deliver the people from the power of the Egyptians." Then Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, brought a holocaust and other sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to participate with Moses' father-in-law in the meal before God. The next day Moses sat in judgment for the people who waited about him from morning until evening. When his father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he inquired, "What sort of thing is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone while all the people have to stand about you from morning till evening?" Moses answered his father-in-law, "The people come to me to consult God. Whenever they have a disagreement, they come to me to have me settle the matter between them and make known to them God's decisions and regulations." "You are not acting wisely," his father-in-law replied. "You will surely wear yourself out, and not only yourself, but also these people with you. The task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me, and I will give you some advice that God may be with you. Act as the people's representative before God, bringing to him whatever they have to say. Enlighten them in regard to the decisions and regulations, showing them how they are to live and what they are to do. But you should also look among all the people for able and God-fearing men, trustworthy men, who hate dishonest gain, and set them as officers over groups of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. Let these men render decisions for the people in all ordinary cases. More important cases they should refer to you, but all the lesser cases they can settle themselves. Thus your burden will be lightened, since they will bear it with you. If you do this, when God gives you orders, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied." Moses followed the advice of his father-in-law and did all that he had suggested. He picked out able men from all Israel and put them in charge of the people as officers over groups of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. They rendered decisions for the people in all ordinary cases. The more difficult cases they referred to Moses, but all the lesser cases they settled themselves. Then Moses bade farewell to his father-in-law, who went off to his own country. Chapter 19. In the 3rd month after their departure from the land of Egypt, on its first day, the Israelites came to the desert of Sinai. After the journey from Rephidim to the desert of Sinai, they pitched camp. While Israel was encamped here in front of the mountain, Moses went up the mountain to God. Then the Lord called to him and said,
"Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob, tell the Israelites, you have seen for yourselves how I treated the Egyptians, and how I bore you up on eagle's wings and brought you here to myself. Therefore, if you hearken to my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my special possession, dearer to me than all other people, though all the earth is mine. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. That is what you must tell the Israelites."
So Moses went and summoned the elders of the people. When he set before them all that the Lord had ordered him to tell them, the people all answered together, "Everything the Lord has said we will do." Then Moses brought back to the Lord the response of the people. The Lord also told him,
"I am coming to you in a dense cloud, so that when the people hear me speaking with you, they may always have faith in you also."
When Moses then had reported to the Lord the response of the people, the Lord added,
"Go to the people and have them sanctify themselves today and tomorrow. Make them wash their garments and be ready for the 3rd day. For on the 3rd day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people. Set limits for the people all around the mountain, and tell them, take care not to go up the mountain, or even to touch its base. If anyone touches the mountain, he must be put to death. No hand shall touch him. He must be stoned to death or killed with arrows. Such a one, man or beast, must not be allowed to live. Only when the ram's horn resounds may they go up to the mountain."
Then Moses came down from the mountain to the people, and had them sanctify themselves and wash their garments. He warned them, "Be ready for the 3rd day. Have no intercourse with any woman." On the morning of the 3rd day there were peals of thunder and lightning, and a heavy cloud over the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. But Moses let the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stationed themselves at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was all wrapped in smoke, for the Lord came down upon it in fire. The smoke rose from it as though from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. The trumpet blast grew louder and louder, while Moses was speaking and God answering him with thunder. When the Lord came down to the top of Mount Sinai, he summoned Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up to him. Then the Lord told Moses,
"Go down and warn the people not to break through toward the Lord in order to see him. Otherwise, many of them will be struck down. The priests, too, who approach the Lord must sanctify themselves, else he will vent his anger upon them."
Moses said to the Lord, "The people cannot go up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us to set limits around the mountain to make it sacred." The Lord repeated,
"Go down now, then come up again along with Aaron. But the priests and the people must not break through to come up to the Lord, else he will vent his anger upon them."
So Moses went down to the people and told them this. Chapter 20. Then God delivered all these commandments.
"I, the Lord, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that place of slavery. You shall not have other gods besides me. You shall not carve idols for yourselves in the shape of anything in the sky above, or on the earth below, or in the waters beneath the earth. You shall not bow down before them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, inflicting punishment for their fathers' wickedness on the children of those who hate me, down to the third and fourth generation, but bestowing mercy down to the 1,000th generation on the children of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave unpunished him who takes his name in vain. Remember to keep holy the Sabbath day. 6 days you may labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. No work may be done then, either by you, or your son or daughter, or your male or female slave, or your beast, or by the alien who lives with you. In 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. But on the 7th day he rested. That is why the Lord has blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that you may have a long life in the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male or female slave, nor his ox or ass, nor anything else that belongs to him."
When the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the trumpet blast, and the mountain smoking, they all feared and trembled. So they took up a position much farther away, and said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen, but let not God speak to us, or we shall die." Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid, for God has come to you only to test you and put his fear upon you, lest you should sin." Still, the people remained at a distance, while Moses approached the cloud where God was. The Lord told Moses,
"Thus shall you speak to the Israelites. You have seen for yourselves that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make anything to rank with me. Neither gods of silver nor gods of gold shall you make for yourselves. An altar of earth you shall make for me, and upon it you shall sacrifice your holocausts and peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen, in whatever place I choose for the remembrance of my name. I will come to you and bless you. If you make an altar of stone for me, do not build it of cut stone, for by putting a tool to it, you desecrate it. You shall not go up by steps to my altar, on which you must not be indecently uncovered.